how do you guys find that balance, especially even you, Rick, in scouting? How do you guys find that balance between the eye test and analytics?
Well, I mean, I think from an evaluation standpoint, to me, it's a guide, it's a tool, it's something else to consider. I will never, ever, ever make a decision solely on analytics. I think if you do, that's where you get hurt. The eye test, I mean, if you've been watching football, that's going to tell you whether a guy can play or not.
Eagles fans, Birds 365 is in full effect. I'm here with John McMullen, Rick Serritella from the NFL Draft Bible, and yours truly, I am Tone DeShields II, the producer from behind the scenes of JAKIB Sports and also Chalk It Up Sports, where no matter if we win or if we lose, we just got to charge it to the game. You guys, first things first, good morning. How are we feeling today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys? Look, it seems like it's night where you are, Tone, at the ocean. It's light where you and I are, Rick. So I don't know what it is, man.
Hey, it's that kind of party.
It's always busy this time of year for me. So I don't know if it's day, night, whatever.
You know what I want to do? I want to give people the different vibes of Ocean Casino, right? You can have fun at Ocean during the daytime. You can have fun at Ocean at nighttime if you're into that nightlife sort of thing. Whatever you want to do, Ocean Casino has your vibe. So make sure you guys go check that out as well. But we have a great show for you guys. Now, I know you guys were probably expecting the Mac Man. Mac Man has other obligations. He's getting it done on the other side of things. He's doing some work for WIP. And, we're going to try to hold it down for him, and we're going to try not to botch this thing. But we still have the man, the myth, the legend, John McMullen, and then the good guy from the NFL Draft Bible, the NFL savant, Rick Serritella, is going to hold us down. So, man, there's so many things to talk about. I think day 2 of training camp is today. Well, day 2 of grass time, right, John?
Yeah, day 2 of open practice, we'll say. They had a walkthrough yesterday that was closed to the media. Yeah, and that's probably the biggest story early in camp, just how little the Eagles are doing. They got 10, I think the number is 10 practices open at the NovaCare complex. And it's a long way from the days of 2.5 hours with Andy Reid. They went 58 minutes on the first practice, and we'll see. And that was a high-intensity practice. That was what Nick Sirianni calls a green practice, Rick Serritella. So high intensity for 58 minutes. Bang. Get ready.
I'll tell you, man. Well, it's funny that you started there because I saw Sirianni's already making adjustments to the schedule. He replaced 4 practices with 4 walkthroughs.
Yeah.
And the reasoning was he doesn't want to have back-to-back contact practices at all during training camp. And to me, I'm more of an old school guy. I get it. You got the new CBA has kind of created this Club Med atmosphere. But to me, not just with the Eagles, but when I look around the league, when you replace live practices with walkthroughs and these, you've seen those donut tackling dummies.
Yeah.
That's why the tackling around the league, especially at the start of the season, is way down.
Early. Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think, the result of these lack of contact hitting padded practices. And, the other thing is fans don't realize guys like Johnny Mac are more valuable than ever. I mean, the public gets to attend one practice. Oh, thanks, guys. And now you're saying that you don't even have full training camp access. Is it just 10 practices you'll be allowed to see? Will you see any real live practices, John, or are you just invited to the walkthroughs?
Well, that part of it is collectively bargained, as you mentioned, Rick. So the Eagles could have went 90 minutes on their first practice, and they went 58. You can't wear pads. I mean, you can't wear pads. They pushed that back as well. I think it's day 5, maybe something like that. All of that is collectively bargained. And not an Eagles decision. But, there are certain guys, Andy, as I brought up, John Harbaugh, who, grew up under Andy as a coach, those sort of old school guys that are going to use every single minute available to them, period, end of sentence. The Eagles have gone a different direction. Look, they claim to have these studies that say day 3. They had conditioning on day 1. They had to practice on day 2. They say there's a spike in soft tissue injuries in day 3. Nobody ever provides these studies, but they claim they have these studies, and that's what it says. So they go to a walkthrough, and you mentioned those 4 walkthroughs that Nick has put on the schedule, Rick. Yeah, those are after high intensity practices. So at the NovaCare complex, yeah, 10 practices. They are having joint practices, but they'll be in Cleveland, Berea, and Miami. So obviously those would be outside of Philadelphia. Really, I mean, the lightest summer on record in Philadelphia for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Whew, yeah, and
Yeah.
you got to go to Miami. I think August 27th and 28th. You can catch some back-to-back practices. But I also think this is kind of a result or a effect from the COVID kind of NFL teams realize, like, hey, you know what? Maybe media doesn't need to come into the locker room. Maybe we can cut down their access. Maybe we could just do Zoom interviews. But just going back to the practice length, like I go to training camp practices where teams spend 30 to 40 minutes just on special teams.
Yeah.
So to only have an hour-long practice, to me, well, hey, let's go practice special teams for another half hour, because those are all guys trying to make the roster anyway, and our special teams unit stinks.
Right. Yeah, it's a fair point. They were outside of Jake Elliott. You could argue the Eagles need improvement in every aspect. People always rip on Aaron Cepas as the punter, but hey, guess what? Their punt coverage was bad as well. Their kick return game was bad. Their punt return game was bad. So there's room for improvement. That's sort of the hidden yardage aspect of it, Rick, in that, the Eagles lost that pretty consistently last year, each and every week. And that's difficult to overcome. Those are, this is a team that likes to say they try to win outside the margins. That's a way to win outside the margins. Nobody ever talks about special teams, as you mentioned. It seems like an afterthought here, and that's what changed from the days. I already brought up Harbaugh once. I'll bring him up again. Very rarely do you rise to prominence as a head coach in this league with your reputation being on special teams. John Harbaugh did it. Dave Bipp, it was very important under Chip Kelly and Doug Peterson. Poor Michael Clay. Yeah, he got, of those 58 minutes, last 10 were on special teams. That was it.
Yeah, this is a very interesting time, right? Like you guys said, the new CBA, this new culture that's building. Rick, I know you mentioned COVID, but the theme throughout what I'm hearing you guys say are analytics. These NFL teams now are leaning on analytics more than ever. You mentioned Sirianni's new practice philosophy with the green days, yellow days, red days, and they even have guys that I guess conclude these studies, and essentially they're using analytics to track and gauge frequency of injuries. And even Nick Sirianni said in his press conference, right? He indicated that we're using analytics to track the distance ran of all the position groups. And I have to ask you guys, of course, analytics has its place. The numbers guys need their jobs. Let's make that very clear. The numbers guys need their jobs, but at the same time, where's the line drawn? At what point do we rely on our eyes and our instincts? How do you guys find that balance, especially even you, Rick, in scouting? How do you guys find that balance between the eye test and analytics?
Well, Rick? I mean, I think from an evaluation standpoint, to me, it's a guide. It's a tool. It's something else to consider. I will never, ever, ever make a decision solely on analytics. I think if you do, that's where you get hurt. The eye test, I mean, if you've been watching football, that's going to tell you whether a guy can play or not. And, in terms of analytics and telling me how far a guy ran and what his heart rate is, look, I played on teams. We didn't have the most talent, but we were the best conditioned. You want to know what the heart rate is? You go run those guys after practice. You go run the snake drill. Go run a mile after you finish up your practice. And guess what? They'll be playing fresh in the fourth quarter, just like they were in the first quarter. I don't need a computer to tell me that. That's been happening since the start of football. So I get it. I mean, I think analytics too, though, is so susceptible to, all right, well, A.J. Brown caught 90% of the balls in his catch radius. Well, Tone, what your catch radius, what you think someone's catch radius is, might be different than what I think a catch radius is. If it hits your hands, that's a catch radius. But hey, if I could leap and jump, maybe somebody else thinks that's in his catch radius. So I think, analytics, you got to be careful there. And the other thing I don't like is when you're making decisions in game. And I get it. You got all these stats on fourth down. Go ask Brandon Staley. It takes away from the ebb and flow. Like if I'm the coach and I got a headset on, I gotta feel for the game. If I'm a play caller, I gotta feel for the game. Now all of a sudden, I'm gonna go to the binder like Joe Girardi and go find the stat of what I should do. I mean, I'm
Finder
just not a big
Joe. Yeah, Finder Joe, Rick. Yeah, I'm I'm more of, you bring up Brandon Staley, like, I find situations, Joe Banner, the Eagles have always been at the forefront of analytics, even if you go back to pre-Howie Roseman. And Joe Banner said something that always stuck with me, and it was, you know, give me something I can use, essentially, when he's talking about all this data. I don't care about the data. Like, where can I have an advantage over another team? It's what I already brought up, winning outside the margins. That's what the Eagles think they're good at. Bring me something that gives me an advantage over team X, team Y. That's what the Eagles kind of feel about analytics. There's some coaches, like you said, Rick, if you're at the plus 40-yard line and it's 4th and 1, go for it. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it. No sort of room for nuance, or if you're minus 40, punt the football, no room for nuance. To me, it comes down to, okay, who are you playing? Are they going to score 30 points? Are they better than me on paper? Is it Tom Brady? I'm going to have to score touchdowns to beat this team. Then I'm probably going to go, there's nuance to it. If I'm playing a bad team, I'm probably going to back them up and say, all right, let's play this way. They're not going to drive 90 yards on me. So I think there's a feel to it. But it's very, very helpful. But as far as where we started this, as far as the safety aspect, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Dr. Arsh Denode is the Eagles' chief medical officer. He knows more about these things than I do. I don't have that kind of hubris to say I know more than him. If he says that's the way to go, all right, that's the way to go from a health standpoint. But, one of the things that gets lost in this game, I think, is it's a violent game. It's a physical game. You can't legislate injuries. Guys are going to get hurt. So you have this sort of give and take. Well, yeah, we want to keep everybody as healthy as possible, but we want to prepare, because if we don't win games, we're going to lose our jobs. There's a give and take there. So where's that preparation go? And a lot of people point back to last season. The Eagles blew out Atlanta in week 1 and said, it worked. We didn't have a high stress training camp. Everybody was healthy. We blew out a team that was probably not prepared with a rookie head coach. And they say it worked, and they put a period on it. Yeah, but then you started 2-5. You won, one of your next 6 games. Why are you putting a period on it after week 1? And by the way, in those first 7 games, you were the most penalized team in football. You're telling me that didn't have something to do with not preparing correctly? So I kind of see both sides of that picture.
Yeah, absolutely, because you brought up a key point, right? Having that balance of the marriage of analytics and the eye test, right? Your instincts, because you have to it's a balancing act, especially in live game. Rick, you brought it up. Sometimes you can't just rely strictly on the numbers in the game. Sometimes you have to rely on, okay, my guys have been playing with a heart, with a bigger heart today compared to the other guys. Analytics don't measure heart. Analytics don't measure, a guy sneezing in the middle of a play. Like, you know what I mean? Just random acts of, occurrences in games, right? Analytics can't track everything, but even more, analytics can't track discipline. And this Eagles team lacked a lot of discipline when the season started last year. We were one of the most penalized teams, like you guys said. You know, where you because we're practicing so much less, because the Eagles are practicing so much less these days, especially. How much of a factor do you guys anticipate that being again? We have a lot. We have many new faces on this team, and guys are learning terminology. Guys are learning philosophies. How important will discipline be when the season starts? Because I'm telling you, I've been watching some Detroit Lions practices. Those guys seem very violent right now. Those guys seem like they're chomping at the bits for week
Because
one.
That's Deuce and Dan Campbell. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I mean
so
they're
discipline,
going to
man.
be as
What is it?
physical. Yeah, they're going to be as physical as they're at least allowed to be. But um, the discipline thing I think was a little bit overblown early in the season. I know. A shout out to Jody Mac, his love of Derek Barnett. Yeah, I'm more concerned with. All right, I got to get Jordan Davis up to speed. I got to get Grant Calcaterra up to speed. As strange as that sounds for a 6th-round pick, at least you have some time with N'Kobe Dean. At least you have some time with Cam Jurgens, players like that. But and then when you start talking about the free agents who are new to the system, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some growing pains. I mean, all right, James Bradbury's a veteran. Um, does that mean he can just go into a new system? And we always talk about the NFL, Rick. Baseball trade deadline's coming up. You can trade for a player and put him in the lineup. He's going to either hit the baseball or he's not going to hit the baseball. There's no chemistry there, sort of mano a mano. In football, there's a big difference going from team to team and scheme to scheme and coach to coach. So that would be my bigger concern with the lack of preparation time.
Yeah, and I think the practice time could play a factor there. The good thing, we talked about it on Wednesday's show, is the continuity that they have. They have the same coaching staff back, so I think you can teach quote unquote discipline in the film room. Film study. Hey, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. Hopefully they're spending more than 4 hours a week in there doing it. And
well, they spend more time. I mean, that's the positive. They do spend more time in meetings. They do spend more time with walkthroughs. They have more classroom time, for lack of a bit. So where are we in sort of the evolution of football? Is the classroom becoming more important than the field? And you just teach the guys and then say, all right, let them go and see if they can do it. I think we're getting to that point.
Yeah, I mean, the iPad now is a must-carry thing everywhere you go. It's all about
Microsoft Surface. Come on, Rick. Be an NFL guy.
So you mentioned N'Kobe Dean. So far, so good. It's only been one day, but rave reviews from the rookie linebacker.
Well, he started on the 3rd team, so I don't know if you're Jody Mac and you're thinking he's going to be in the Pro Bowl. We've had this debate pretty consistently. He's probably brought it up to you. He thinks I don't like N'Kobe. It's not that. I just think there's going to be a ramp up here. There's going to be, he's going to, for all the reasons I just said. And they have TJ Edwards, they have Kaiser White, they have Davion Taylor. So, I bring up Calcaterra because they need Calcaterra. They need him. They don't have anything behind Dallas Goedert right now. Your Jack Stoles of the world. You just picked up the Yale kid. Calcaterra showed some nice things. They don't need N'Kobe Dean to play week 1. Do you hope he's up to speed? Maybe week 5, week 8. Yeah. But I don't think there's a necessity to get him ready for September 11th in Detroit. And, he started on the 3rd team. And that shows you that they're going to take things slow and see how it goes. And if he's healthy and if he's ready to go, great. If not, at least they have some decent insurance policies. which I think is a positive. Certain other positions, you can't say that.
Yeah,
Which is weird, by the way, to say it about linebacker, because we haven't said it about linebacker with the Eagles for years. But TJ's developed into a really good player. And Kaiser White can, he's proven himself at least to be a capable linebacker in this league. So that's better than what the Eagles typically are at linebacker.
Yeah, this is like the first time in a long time where I think the Eagles don't really have to rely too heavily on rookies making an immediate impact, because this team hasn't necessarily, had home runs all the time in free agency or in the draft, or this roster from top to bottom for the most part. There's really no question about who's going to be the starters, but that linebacker room is one of the more intriguing storylines of the offseason to me. Out of all the groups on the defense, I know the safety position is something people love to talk about as well. With Marcus Epps and Ant Harris and Jaquaski Tart, Kavon Wallace. But that linebacker room intrigues me so much because I think the linebacker position has been undervalued for several years in the NFL. But you watch certain teams, like, for example, the Buccaneers, when they won their Super Bowl against the Chiefs, you saw how vital the linebackers were in that, in that defensive scheme, and those guys being able to keep up with Gronk and giving him a little, well, not Gronk, but giving Travis Kelce a little bit of a hard time. These linebackers these days, they have to continue to make themselves valuable. They have to find a way to become these hybrid guys that are able to run sideline to sideline. I'm curious to know, what are you guys' evaluation of the linebacker position in general in the NFL, and the way the Eagles have approached it and where they are today with it?
Well, I don't know about you, Rick, but I think teams that have, I can't call him Darius anymore, Shaquille Leonard, Bobby Wagner, over the years. You saw Tampa Bay with Devin White and Levante David, and you have these guys who can run, these true 3-down linebackers. Teams that have them seem to really, really like them and really, really value them. The Eagles want to run, a Vic Fangio-like scheme. Well, all right, let's, hopefully the Kobe Dean could be Roquan Smith, but Roquan's a top 10 pick for a reason. It's interesting. The teams that have gone linebacker at the top of the draft, they've been very, very successful with it over the past few years. And there's other teams that just don't value the position. And, Rick, you have all that experience with the draft. You see that large sort of demarcation line in the league between teams that value the position and teams that don't, really.
Yeah, and I think the middle linebacker position has kind of been devalued in terms of draft, and maybe that's also too a little bit why Dean slipped to the third round. I know the Eagles were thinking about taking him in the second round. They were ecstatic he was still there in the third round. But today's linebacker, as you mentioned, John, they do want, the 2-down thumpers are days of yesteryear, right? They want 3-down backers, leaner guys, maybe borderline body molds that look like safeties. Some of these linebackers that can like in the Kobe Dean, that can cover and drop back if he's asked to do so. So I like the depth of this Eagles linebacker unit. I mean, Hassan Reddick is the stud, but there's some good players here. I mean, Kaiser White, he led the charges and tackles last year. I think Sean Bradley's a guy, Temple Tough is one of my personal favorites. And, he might be on the bubble, but I mean, that's a guy that can play for me any day of the week. We talk about the intangibles, the intensity, the love for the game. Sean Bradley's a guy who, it might not show up in the stat box, but that guy brings intensity and competitiveness, and that elevates the people around him as well.
Oh yeah, Sean, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni were talking to us at the podium the other day when Sean Bradley came out to the field, and screaming and hooting and hollering, and couldn't even hear people on microphones. That's how fired up Sean Bradley is. So he can bring that. Hassan Reddick, he's an edge rusher, and that's what you know, I'm not saying the Eagles aren't going to have him drop into coverage, but when he drops into coverage, it's going to be to try to fool the quarterback. They're not paying him $15 million to be to be that sort of linebacker that runs sideline to sideline. He's going to be a quarterback hunter. He's going to be a sack guy. He's going to be the edge rusher. So if you look at, again, they're trying to run Vic Fangio's defense, as everyone is, it seems, in the NFL, but or better identified Brandon Staley's version of Vic Fangio's defense. So if you start thinking about how the Bears use Khalil Mack, that's how the Eagles want to use Hassan Reddick. Now he's not that good, but he's a good player, and that's sort of the role they want to use him in. And part of the thing is, when you see the contract and you say, all right, yeah, he's going after the quarterback. They're not paying a linebacker 50. They're not paying an off-ball linebacker $15 million. It's not what the Eagles do.
Understood. And John, I know you got to get out of here in a few minutes, but I want to leave you with this, right? We spoke about the linebackers and those guys who are kind of like hybrids. The theme of this Eagles defense right now to me is versatility. And one guy that intrigues me, I know Rick loves Sean Bradley, and I'm a Sean Bradley fan as well, but I'm really fascinated about the newcomer, Kyron Johnson. And maybe Rick, you can add some more insight on this guy. I just love his demeanor. I love how self-analytical he is. He's someone who's really in tune with his own game. I got a sense of that in one of his first press conferences with the Eagles when he first got drafted. And his time at Kansas, he didn't really thrive in that off-ball drop-back linebacker role. It took him, I think it took about until maybe his second or third season in Kansas to really just take off as that edge rusher. That was where he dominated, right? Kind of had that similar trajectory of a Hassan Reddick. What do you guys think the Eagles' plans are for a guy like Kyron Johnson, someone who's maybe a natural, more athletically gifted, and maybe potentially is a natural edge rusher?
Well, Rick can talk about the pass rushing potential, but he is sort of a backup. He and Patrick Johnson are the backups to Hassan Reddick. So the Eagles are keeping him at that sort of edge rusher, Sam linebacker position, which he, as you mentioned, he did well at Kansas. But right off the bat, we talked about special teams. He's a great special teams player, and that's where he's going to help right away. You want to pray Kyron Johnson doesn't get on the field that much on defense, simply because, not that he can't play, but that means Hassan Reddick's not healthy. So, from that standpoint, defensively, he's a developmental guy, try to get him up to speed in a couple of years. But special teams, they need him to help right away. And, he's a 4-4 guy, right, Rick? I mean, he can run. So as a coverage player, he's got a chance to be something special.
Yeah, he's got the traits, no doubt about that. And I think John hit the nail on the head. I mean, you want to develop him to kind of be that in that backup Sam linebacker role and be a special teams contributor. And I know during his time at Kansas, there was a lot of coaching turmoil, a lot of different schemes and systems he had to play through and go through. So maybe not always, playing out of position a little bit there, but special teams is going to be where he earns his money. And yeah, I think Sam backer is where he's going to make a living.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, you guys, John, we appreciate you so much for making time for us today. We know you have to get down to the Novacare complex and, take some notes and make sure we have a lot to talk about at 7 p.m. tonight on Football 24/7 on JAKIB Sports. Make sure you guys go check out John's work on JAKIBsports.com. He's going to be giving you guys a lot of updates about your Philadelphia Eagles during training camp. He's going to give you guys the inside scoop. He's going to give you guys some insight on some storylines and some narratives that you guys are probably fiending for right now. And that's pretty much it, man. John, once again, we appreciate you. Try to stay cool. Get yourself some Rita's water ice. You know what I mean?
Mango, baby, mango.
Mango. Now, are you a guy that mixes it? Are you a
No,
mixer?
no, mango all the
Oh,
way. Mango
come
consistent.
on. Man, what about you, Rick? Are you a mixer?
I am, you know, it depends on what mood I'm in, but I like a little variety in my life.
No,
Hey,
no.
I'm mad at
I'm a bubblegum rainbow kind of guy. You know, my daughter is a big
that.
rainbow fan.
Slow
So
and steady wins the race. Devin Allen, Olympic hurdler. What does he go with? Mango. Bang. Mango,
Hey,
mango, mango.
as a matter of fact, didn't they have Nicole Dean carrying the first tray of Ritas to the
Yeah,
kids,
you
something
got
like
to.
that?
If you're a rookie, you got to carry the Ritas. You got
Oh
to.
man. Oh man, that hazing. But you guys, he's John McMullen. I'm here with Rick Serritella from the NFL Draft Bible, the newcomer to JAKIBSports.com and JAKIB Sports. You know, we're going to talk about his new show later on in the show. I'm Tone DeShields II. You guys are locked in on Burge 365. Do not turn that dial. Keep it locked.